Welcome to Dominant Mets Nation. And folks, I gotta say, this is the definition of a feel good Friday. Mets acquiring a flamethrower, Gregory Soto, then tonight having a very good ball game, winning their 60th game of the year. And you know what? We are turning on all cylinders right now. Stearns is firing in the front office. The Mets hitters look like they actually have a plan at the plate, and everybody is clicking right now. So you have to feel good. Even Lindor, 0 for 31, no more. Lindor having 3 hits tonight. Homer, double. I mean, looking good, hitting from the left side. I mean, you gotta love what you see. Clay Holmes, all right, the guy can't get out of the 5th inning, but at least he squeaked by. He managed to squeak by, throwing not a season high, but I believe he tied his season high, throwing 104 pitches. And that was a really good magician act by Clay Holmes to get by the 5th inning, and really had to do that. You're winning 6-1. Just throw strikes. Just throw strikes. And one of the most impressive performances, and I hope Clay Holmes was watching, Rico Garcia. I mean, throwing 2 strong innings, and the definition of throwing strikes: attack, attack, attack. Him throwing in the 7th and 8th inning. And that's what you got to do when you got a big lead. Throw strikes. Throw strikes. It's not rocket science. So you had a good game today. Right after, again, the Mets made a very, I would say, telling move. Telling move. A lot of people were waiting to see in the last couple of weeks. How aggressive were the Mets going to be? Was it going to be like a tiptoe approach around the deadline, kind of like last year, where the Mets upgraded their talent, but by a smidge? Or were they going to go all in? All in. And I think this first big move is really telling, and it gives you a really good sense of what the Mets are planning for this trade deadline. And the funny thing was, leading up to this trade deadline, all I heard was that, obviously there were teams that were undecided. You're going to be sellers, you're going to be buyers, what's going on? But what I was hearing, and what you were hearing from a lot of experts, is there weren't that many options. Like, the sellers out there weren't many sellers, and that there were a large amount of buyers, right? So, if you're a Mets fan, you need, I mean, this is just what Mets fans are saying. Not that I necessarily agree, but people are saying you need a third base, you need a couple relievers, you need a center fielder, you need maybe an extra DH, you need a starting pitcher. So the list was a pretty long list, right? And then even if you fill the needs in those positions, how much of an upgrade were those players actually going to be? Now, on my list of needs, a guy like, a left-handed reliever, especially a flamethrower like Gregory Soto, 2-time All-Star, a guy like him was very high on my list. Very high on my list. So I'm so glad that a week before the trade deadline, we already crossed off one of our biggest needs. Now, according to David Stearns, there's a lot more work to do. I mean, seems like it's going to be the first of a slew of trades. And I think a guy like David Stearns, who has been methodically building this team in the last 2 years, this is all part of the plan. Year one, you're not going to, at the deadline, you weren't going to trade a lot of your upper top tier chips. You were going to continue to develop. Plus, the assessment of last year's team was very different. Stearns mentioned in his press conference that he looks at the ceiling, the highest potential possibilities of this team. And I think last year he kind of undervalued that. Went after a Paul Blackburn and, a number 6 and number 7 starter, giving you extra depth. But when you're in the playoffs and, Kodai Senga was last year injured, so you're not sure if he's going to be back, a guy like Paul Blackburn doesn't give you much confidence. He did end up getting hurt, but I believe Stearns is kind of tipping his hand, showing you that he's learned from last year. Like, we're going to make upgrades, and this year it's not just going to be a Phil Maton. We get a two-time All-Star, a guy who could throw 97, 98, 99, 100 miles per hour from the left side to go in addition to Brooks Raley. So now you have two really solid arms from the left side. Okay, so at this moment, you have two very good, very solid arms from the left side. So not easy to do. I mean, it's not easy to acquire that type of talent, in this landscape, when there's not many sellers, when there's a lot of teams still competing for those player positions. And then when you listen to the broadcast today, the bullpen, although overworked, there are like more options. I mean, there are more options right now. As I believe Keith said it on the broadcast, the circle of trust in that bullpen is growing. Those guys in the circle of trust, obviously, you got Edwin Diaz. Now you got Soto in the mix, Reed Garrett, Budo. I mean, he's going to get better. Brooks Raley. Brazabon's been very solid. Rico Garcia in his very short amount of outings, a lot better than a guy like Ryan Stanek thus far. So, I mean, you are building that bullpen. And a guy like David Stearns, I mean, that I would say is his strongest suit, building the bullpen. And then, a lot of I would say a lot of hesitation with Stearns about being a small market GM. Telling you, this guy's been very impressive in this very small sample size, a year and a half, right? You got the New York Mets right now, first place, a week before the trade deadline. We're in prime position to dominate down the stretch run. Now we're getting reinforcements. We finally have our starting rotation healthy. Folks, this is the first time all year long that we have a legit starting rotation healthy. And, folks, it's only going to get better because, as we know, Sean Manaea, not built up yet. Kodai Senga, not built up yet. So you are building up your rotation. You are building up the arm strength, going 6-7 innings. Hopefully these guys like Sean Manaea can build up that type of stamina, but it's all about the playoffs now. It is all about the playoffs and getting yourself in position, best position to make that World Series run. That's what it's going to be about. And I think the Mets are going to be dead serious. And, I saw the energy on the field tonight. In my opinion, I saw that. I saw energy. I saw confidence. And, right out the box, the New York Mets put runs on the board, 2 runs in the very first inning. And the New York Mets, I am so happy right now. I'm so happy. I mean, I see a pep in their stuff. Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso. I mean, the lineup right now is far from its potential. I think Francisco Alvarez gave this team a jolt, gave this team a bit of a boost in the last couple games. Today, you relied more. I mean, actually today, you really had the whole lineup really kind of getting into the mix. I mean, almost everybody Nimmo had 2 hits, Lindor had 3 hits, Soto 2 hits, Alonso, he got an RBI, no hits. McNeil, he had a walk, Beatty a hit, Alvarez a hit, Mauricio a hit. Taylor got an RBI. So everybody really got into the action. Everybody got into the mix. That's what you really like to see. And on the pitching side, Clay Holmes, although throwing a lot of pitches, very strong. Made pitchers in that 5th inning, big pop-up when the first and second, when the first 2 guys got on base, got a huge pop-up, then got a huge strikeout. So Clay Holmes in very tight